Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm J.R. Forasteros, and this is the Beacon Bit. Today we're finishing our exploration of the parable of the Rich Man and Lazarus, which is in Luke 16:19 through 31. If you haven't read that yet, please go and read that before you watch this video. And you can find a link to it in the description for this video, or you can go check it on, Google it or whatever. But I want to ask the question, who do you feel an obligation to help? Who do you feel an obligation to help? I think most of us would say, I definitely feel an obligation towards my family. If someone in my family is in trouble, I feel sort of compelled to help them, right? Many of us would probably say friends, if they're friends we have that we would feel obligated to help. Maybe once you get past that, maybe it's your neighbors or other people in your community or your extended family. Some of us may feel an obligation towards our people, whoever that might be. If you come from a particular ethnic group, you might feel a particular kinship with them that you feel an obligation towards, or maybe a country of origin or ancestry. Again, it's a genuine question. Who do you feel an obligation towards? Because in this parable, Jesus seems to indicate that we have a particular obligation to the poor. And we're going to be looking at this through the lens of a Nigerian scholar named Olubiyi Adewale today. I found his interpretation of this parable really provocative and challenging. And so as he's writing, he says, it's easy for us to say, yes, we all know that Jesus has this preferential option for the poor. This is a foundation of liberation theology, for instance. But what does that mean in this particular context? And what's really challenging here is that we have Jesus imagining this afterlife scenario where the rich man and Lazarus get swapped. Right? In life, the rich man lived in the lap of luxury and ignored poor Lazarus, who sat outside his gate, and dogs licked his sores, and it's super gross and all of that. But then in the afterlife, they're switched, and Lazarus is in the lap of comfort, Abraham's lap, literally, right? And then the rich man is in torment in Hades, and there's this chasm between them. And so when the rich man begs Abraham to send Lazarus, as though Lazarus is still a servant, right? To just dip water on his tongue. Abraham says, would if we could, but there's this chasm between us. And most of our contemporary English translations say, and besides, there's a chasm, right? He says, in life you should have been better and treated Lazarus better. Oh, and by the way, also there's this chasm, as though they're two unrelated reasons. But our scholar today, Dr. Adewale, says, if you look at the Greek, there's a way to render that Greek conjunction there that's not and besides, but rather because of. So in other words, it is the fact of the rich man's squandering of his wealth and not caring for Lazarus that has created this chasm. As though were there a bridge, it would have been built out of the aid that the rich man rendered to Lazarus during his lifetime. And because there was none of that, then in the afterlife there is also nothing to connect them. And that's a really provocative image, isn't it? To imagine that what we are doing in this lifetime is actually building bridges or not, with those that we will be spending eternity with, or not. That in fact, the kinds of lives that we're living today will be the kinds of lives that we have in eternity. That there's this strong continuation between now and then. And I don't think most of us think that way. We're taught to think that the life that we have now is going to be nothing like the life that we have then, right? That the person that we are now is going to be nothing like the person that we are then. And Jesus says, no, actually, the kind of person that you are and the kind of person that you are becoming is the kind of person that will carry on with you into the afterlife. And we could talk for hours about this because I think it's one of the most misunderstood things about the scriptures. But for now, I want to ask the question, if this is the case, right? If Dr. Adewale's interpretation of this parable is onto something here, then what does that mean for us? Who are our Lazaruses? And we can think on three different levels in our Beacon Bits this week. I want to think locally, right? Who are the people in our local area, maybe in our congregation, maybe in our families, maybe in our communities, right? The people that we interact with on a regular basis. Who are the vulnerable people? Who are the people that sit outside the gates? The people who have nothing or are vulnerable, right? We can think on a national level, which Dr. Adewale does as a Nigerian, right? He's like, we got to think local, we got to think national, we got to think global. So at a national level, who are the people who are vulnerable right now? What is making them vulnerable? How can those of us who have means and resources care for them? What does it look like for us to build bridges with our resources in a way that connects us to them? And then, of course, globally, right? Who are the globally vulnerable? And what does it look like us to live in solidarity with them? Again, in a way that's meaningful, that is tactile, that actually changes things in the here and now. Friends, I think these are, again, very provocative questions, very challenging questions, and I look forward to digging into them with you together. We're going to do that on our Beacon Bits on Sunday. So until then, grace and peace be with you.